Ladies and gentlemen, nope, I'm out of focus. Focus. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Lucore Automotive. This one is your fault because you paid attention to the last Buick video of Rich's. So now he's got a bug into working on his own car.
I came in on a Saturday morning grumpy and did some more work.
Yes. Instead of working on work stuff, playing with his own toys. So this is all on you. He also forgot to film an intro, so here's your intro.
Backwards intro at the end.
Yes, it's all done, but we know it's gonna work, so here you go. 1965 Buick Skylark, 455 swapped, GranSport. Dives into some rear-endy stuff, some brake stuff, some under-hood stuff.
Just random stuff. Found problems I wasn't expecting to have, and
yeah,
you know, that's what happens.
Yeah.
So the aluminum drums was an interesting
they haven't seen that yet.
Oh yeah, that's true. But they'll see that soon enough.
You'll see that in a second. Stay tuned.
It is what it is. It's just, you know, take something apart, think you're going to do something, and then you end up doing 5 other things, and
yes,
none of them are the things you thought you were going to do when you started.
Yes.
Oh well.
There you go. Welcome. Thanks for being here. Roll that beautiful bean footage.
Interesting.
Why won't you come off? That's an aluminum drum. I don't want to hit it with a hammer that bad. I think it's an aluminum drum. Or is it just painted? It's a magnet. That's an aluminum drum. I don't want to hit that with a hammer. Now let's get the other side off, see if we can get it off. So it looks like somebody tightened down lug nuts that crashed against the face of the drum. It probably kind of swaged those. You can see somebody used a hammer to beat these off before. So I'm probably going to have to use a hammer to beat them off again. And if I can get them off, then I'll run a unibit through this and open up all these holes so that they're free. I don't want to have to fight this the next time I pull the brakes off this car. Looks to be running a factory coil that's been cut, and then we're using the airbags to get the ride height where it needs to be, because with the airbags deflated, this thing's sitting on the ground. It's sitting really low, like it bottomed out on every transition I drove across. It bottomed out, and I put air in the bags and it picked it back up to where it needs to be. I have new springs coming for it. I'm going to put stock ride height springs in it and see where it sits, and then we'll decide on a ride height for the back. The front, I'm going to put factory, probably big block coils under it, and then a 2-inch drop spindle to get my suspension geometry improvement, and then we'll figure out what else we're going to do. In the meantime, I'm going to beat the heck out of these really, really awesome aluminum drums. I haven't seen aluminum drums on the back of the car in a long time. These are really on there. I don't know if these studs they should be press in, because they're not the bigger diameter studs. I suppose I could just drive the studs out with an air hammer. These are longer studs, they've been cut off. So these were long studs that were lopped off at some point. So they could be thread in. I don't know. I don't want to break them. I need to get the drum off without destroying it. So I don't think I have time to do the drums today. I decided instead of beating them with a hammer, I'm probably just going to pull the axles out of the axle housing and then set them on my press, and I should be able to press the hub of the axle right out of the drum. But it's getting late today. I'm probably not going to do that today. I did decide to change out my Buick badges on the wheels for some Skylark badges. Not going to add any horsepower, but they should look cool. So my airbag here is holding air. My airbag on the other side is not holding air, so I'm going to probably need to get new airbags. So I have to see if I can find those. I'm sure they're readily available. My tires are basically on the wear bars, so it's time for some new tires. Man, the guy that cut these off cut them all off crooked. Need to bevel that outside edge of all those guys. There was a commercial for a tool to do that, to like chamfer the outside edge of a buggered up bolt. I was fighting a 6-liter diesel today, and I'm still fighting it. It seems to continuously put fuel into the cooling system, and yet I can put 20 psi on the cooling system and I don't lose any pressure. Like, it's had 20 psi on it all day. I've got the injectors out, and I got the injector bores where they're known to leak. Nope, no leaks. It's very odd. Seems to be tight. Header bolts on this side seem to be tight. So I started to get a header gasket leak, and my back bolt on the passenger side came loose, which allowed the clamping force to come off of my header gasket, and thus my header gasket is now blown out. So I'm going to see if I can sneak a new header gasket in here, which basically means removing all the bolts except for the outer two. Should be able to slide the old gasket out, the new gasket in, and tighten my bolts back down. The driver's side header gasket is fine, so I'm going to leave it be for now, and I will put the extra header gasket in the trunk so that I have it for the next time my header gasket blows, because everybody knows that if you have headers, sooner or later you're going to have leaking header gaskets. That's just part of the game. This is going to take a minute. We'll fast forward a little bit. Somebody put some RTV in there too. That's not promising for having this seal up when I'm all done with it. I'm actually leaving the outer 2 bolts and the center bolt, because on the Buick it's got a center bolt right here. On the Oldsmobile it's got a bolt here, a bolt here, and a bolt here. This one has one down here. So I'm actually going to cut the bottom of the gasket out right there so that I can just slide it down onto these 3 bolts. That way I only have to remove the top 4 bolts, and then I can just slide my gasket in without dislodging my header too bad, because these things are kind of a bear, and I'm already against the frame, so I don't think loosening that bolt anymore is going to do anything. I need to get the rest of the gasket out of the back in this back corner. Piece of it just fell out. Let me get a pry bar, because that's probably what it's going to take. Oh. That heater delete plate's made out of aluminum. That's nice. It's fancy. And I'm going to get a pry bar, see if I can separate that. Talking. There's the rest of that gasket I'm looking for. Got it. Awesome. I'll take that as a win. I'm going to cheat. Oh, that worked quite nicely. So now my gasket's in place. I have 3 bolts holding my header in place. Let's put my 4 bolts, start my 4 bolts back in. Once those are all started in, I can lock them down from the center out. And that should solve my tappity tappity tap 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 that's I'm hearing, because my exhaust is leaving out at the head connection instead of out the tailpipe. It's annoying. I start all my header bolts by hand. I'll lock them down, and then I will actually torque them 3 or 4 times after I drive it, just to make sure they're maintaining their torque. There's different things you can do to lock your header bolts down. You can actually stake a couple threads. The exhaust bolts from GM actually come with a stake on both, 180 degrees out on their exhaust manifold bolts to give a slight interference fit to the threads in the head, and that keeps them from walking out. Just one of those little things that I've noticed over the years. This little bolt down here is kind of hard to get to, and I can't get 2 fingers on it to spin it by hand. Luckily for me, somebody who knew what they were doing when they put this car together used a 12-point bolt there. So you can actually wrench that bolt in. But this is a maintenance item. If you have headers on your car and you've just put your car together, you need to check those header bolts over and over and over again. After every heat cycle, you should put a wrench on them. check to make sure that they're staying tight. I did find some 1201 headers, and I haven't found a reference as to what that means. But they it's 3 tubes that go back nice and tight, and then 1 tube that goes out and around the frame rail. And I thought that would be a really cool way to update the headers in this. These headers are working fine, but when I was welding the new pipe's exhaust to it, I kept blowing through the collectors. So I'm kind of thinking, you know, after 30 years, this car was built in the 90s. I'm kind of thinking after 30 years, maybe it's time for a new set of headers. I just don't know if those 1201s are going to fit. It'd be nice to know if they were going to fit before I buy them. But it's like anything, I'll probably end up using them on something if they don't fit this. It's funny when you start working on something, you start looking for stuff that'll complement it. Currently there's some really nicely ported stage 1 heads available, because after doing the water pump and seeing how bad the front cover's messed up, clearly at some point I'm going to have to put a front cover on this car. And that led into a big can of worms of other stuff, like, oh well, if I'm doing the front cover, I should probably do the head gaskets and intake gasket. Well, if I'm in there, well geez, here's a better set of heads. It's just a huge rabbit hole, man. But a pretty good day overall. I didn't get my drums off of the rear. My front drums came off just fine. My brake shoes up front are great. My wheel cylinders look brand new, even though they're probably 30 years old. They look good. I'm going to bleed the brakes on this thing here next time I bring it into the shop. My front brakes are adjusted up. I did have to make some adjustments in there to different things, but in all, my fronts are in good shape. I did determine that I have 373 gears in the rear, and my pinion seal is leaking. I have a little bit of a pinion seal leak. I have a little bit of a bearing noise out of the pinion bearings. So an overhaul kit is in order, so I will get an overhaul kit with axle bearings and axle seals. I usually, when I pull them apart, I just do it all. And that way I don't have to worry about it. So since the drums won't come off the axles, I figure I'll get my overhaul kit in for the rear end, pull the axles out. I should be able to press the hubs or the axle shafts out of the drums. And I'll explain what happened, why the drums won't come off. It's actually, this car was run with the 3-piece weld lights, which have a lug nut that goes all the way through them, and it bottomed out on the aluminum face, and it crimped the drum to the lug nut stud. So I think if I just press the hub out, I think I'll be all right, and then I can just open up the holes. Not a big deal, just it's not something I was expecting to run into today, but that's cars. They give you all sorts of headaches, especially when there's some random mix of parts that somebody put together 30 years ago. But all things considered, this car's pretty awesome. It's got a lot of good stuff going for it. We're going to make it fun. We're going to make it streetable, and still be fun to play when we want to go play. Let's see what this thing sounds like with a complete header gasket on it. I know it's crooked. I'll fix that soon, don't worry.
That reminds me, I want to increase my pump shot a little bit because I have a little bit of a tip and stumble.
So this car does not run a choke. It definitely looks like it had some fires down below a time or two. I'm trying not to do that. I'm going to raise my pump shot from 31 to a 35 and see if that helps with my tip-in stumble. Gravity. I definitely have some carburetor tuning to do on this car, but when we dynoed this thing, the AFR was actually dead on where it needed to be. We had fuel coming in at high RPM out of the back squirters. But I've been noticing this tip-in issue, so I figured I'd try a different pump shot jet. My squirter works instantly, so as soon as you touch the throttle, it's squirting, so I'm good there. Thing's got a couple washers in there. It's a little different. Make more pressure on the spring, I guess. It's got clearance, we're good. Got clearance. I just flooded my car, so I'll have to get in it and put my foot to the floor, flood it more, let it crank the air through with all that extra fuel, and it'll fire right off. And then we can see if my tip-in's better or worse. Yeah, tip-in's a lot better. A lot better. So I like that. I think with that, I'm going to go home. Always just tinkering with stuff, trying to make it better. We had Steve's Chevelle in here this week. You'll probably see that video before this one comes up. Sorted out a few things with it. Made it better. He sent us a text after driving home, and he's like, this thing is night and day different from what it was before. Thank you so much. You're welcome, Steve. It's a beautiful Chevelle. Glad that you are trusting us with it to move it forward, taking it to the next level, and sorting out all the little bits. You know, all these cars need stuff resolved, and that's part of what we do here. I got to figure out something different with this return spring. That'll be on my list of things to do when I occasionally romp on this. The spring will catch on here somehow, and then it holds my idle funny. So I gotta use the actual throttle return spring piece back to a spring. I'll probably get a dual spring as well. You always want to use dual springs for redundancy, because you can do dumb stuff and unsafe stuff, but you can do dumb stuff in the safest manner possible. So dual carburetor springs are important. Other than that, get out in your garage, fix whatever it is you got out there, instead of watching me fix what I got in my garage. Yes, I still have the air filter on here that robs 20 horsepower from this engine. Hard to believe, but that's what it showed on the dyno, so it must be making all sorts of turbulence. So I'll probably go gangster with this thing if I ever take it to the track and see what this thing can do, and just remove the air filter and run it without, because that seems to be the way everybody does it these days. I forgot I closed the gate. Tipton's a lot spicier now. Well, that closes out today's session with my Buick. Not my grandfather's Buick, but my Buick. This thing's a lot better with the new pump shot. The header gasket's fixed. That's a relief, because I hate listening to that thing tapping under the hood. Got an idea what I need to do with the rear gear and the rear rebuild kit. I'm probably going to leave the rear gear alone at the 373, and I'm going to look into a 200R4 transmission swap. That's a bolt-in swap for a turbo 350, so spend a little more on a nice transmission and spend a lot less on custom drive shaft and cross members and all that stuff. So there's ways to do this without spending crap loads of money and still have a bunch of fun. This thing lit up pretty quick out there, but in the car's defense, these tires are from 2003, so the tires are 20 years old. The rear tires are down to the wear bars. They need replaced. This thing will probably do really good on a set of slicks. I'm not planning to put it on slicks. I'm planning to put it on street tires. But I'm going to make it an all-around enjoyable car to drive on the streets, but also go have fun running down the drag strip, because this thing's been a drag car for 30 years. So I think it probably needs to retain some of that heritage. At any rate, thanks for watching. Click like, subscribe, leave us a comment below. See you on the next one, and as always, stay safe out there.